Piers Morgan's been back in the media news this week, declaring that certain newspapers just won't exist in the UK in 10 years' time. Kate, I mean, he's not wrong, but why is he saying this now?
This is him making a case for his new YouTube offering. I would say I think the death of newspapers has been predicted the whole time I've been a journalist. I actually trained on a course that was called newspaper journalism and began my career on a tiny newspaper in Silicon Valley in California, and then at the Telegraph for many years. Newspapers so far have managed to evolve. It's been quite a bumpy ride, I would say, but they have come out the other side and are doing interesting things on all kinds of platforms nowadays. They're a world away from where they were even 10 years ago. So I would say the death of newspapers has long been predicted and so far hasn't happened. But he's not wrong that there's a huge amount of disruption to contend with, and that puts significant pressure on business models. And we've all seen examples of that.
I mean, he's always very good at arguing for whatever he's doing now being the future. So that was his move to ITV. Then it was Talk TV. Now, who needs a linear channel when you have a YouTube channel? Oh, I own the YouTube channel. This is definitely the future and what everybody should be doing. And I suppose as we talked about it at the top of the show, his success, and he has significant YouTube success. There's probably quite a lot of UK figures in the news world that would quite like to replicate it. Do you think, Kate?
It's an interesting question, isn't it? I feel like so far we've seen much more of that in American media. There obviously have been notable examples in the UK, but I'm thinking of Washington that I know pretty well. There are all sorts of smaller players, both digital startups, but also people going solo and launching their own thing. A former Politico who I knew well from Brussels back 10 years ago, Tara Palmieri, did a similar thing in recent weeks. And I do think that's quite interesting. So far, we haven't seen quite such a fragmentation in British media, though Piers is a rare example. I do think we're seeing similar trends in terms of broadcasters launching podcasts or moving into different platforms. But really, for me, that's driven by an audience. So yes, there is this reaction amongst journalists, but it's really because we all know that media consumption habits are changing, and every journalist and every broadcaster wants to get in front of listeners and readers and form a relationship. So I think, it's interesting that we're starting to see that pattern here too.
Jake, Kate mentions podcasts there. Morgan quotes his good friend, Gary Lineker, as the model that he wants to emulate, particularly the part where there's lots of US audience. And he doesn't just want to be a superstar himself. He wants there to be like a Piers Morgan of food and a Piers Morgan of sport. Do you think he's got the ability to do that?
I mean, well, as we've been saying, he's a very effective self-publicist, and I have no doubt that he can build the Uncensored brand. I do think the Goalhanger model of pushing into other areas of expertise is one that we'll probably see more of in the media environment, and I think Piers Morgan certainly has the ability to achieve that. So you might see like a sport uncensored, or I don't know, choose your subject, as you say, food uncensored. And I think it's really interesting that he talks, when he's talking about his ambition for the channel, he's not sort of entering the manosphere, this sort of right-wing conservative successful media ecology that's sprung up in America. He talks about being much more impartial than that, not taking sides and offering perspectives from all walks of life and all parts of the political arena. And that has clearly got him to the place where he is now. He's got nearly 4 million subscribers on YouTube, nearly a billion, just over 1 billion views. I think he's done really well to build and salvage that channel out of the wreckage that was Talk TV.
I was talking to someone recently, and there's a bit of a difference between him working for someone else and now him working for himself. And the person was telling me that they couldn't get him to do certain amount of live reads when it was owned by News. Now he's more than happy to do any live reads because he sees how much money he'll get for them. I mean, there is a kind of interesting thing about becoming a business person, and he also did quite a long interview on Semaphore's media podcast, which is definitely worth a listen. And this, and in the Guardian piece that we've quoted, I think he's looking to raise some money to grow his business. I mean, Kate, there's sort of interesting thing of journalists, presenters wanting to become entrepreneurs. They do really want to own the fruits of their labours, don't they?
Yes, well, I think once you've seen others do it, there is definitely that instinct amongst all of us, right? Is there a world in which I could build this myself? Of course, as we know at Politico, building a media brand is a incredibly exciting challenge, but it's a pretty hard labour at times, and getting something off the ground from scratch is a tricky thing. I also think there is a difference between building a publication and a brand in our sense and people who are really branching out into being influencers in their own right. They are the brand. That is a different relationship with your audience, and grappling with how that fits alongside some of the core principles of journalism, objectivity, impartiality. That is a challenge that I think some of these characters who are trying to make themselves front and center will have to grapple with. Interestingly, with the Gary Lineker example in the Goal Hanger podcasts and some of the very successful ones, that's not a Gary Lineker front and center. He very much is the businessman. And I think one of the questions for Piers is, can he manage that? If it's about him and he is really the brand in itself, that's different to having him driving a brand somewhat more behind the scenes. And can he get that combination right? Obviously, somebody like Gary Lineker appears to be able to be both the front man and not, but that is an art too, and I think one you have to grapple with a bit. And if you're in Piers' shoes,
team manager, not striker, might be slightly challenging for him to cope with, but we will see.